Welcome back to the shop as we finish our medieval dagger project. I'll explain what I'm doing along the way so that besides simply watching the video, you'll understand what's going on and maybe be able to learn something or enjoy the process a little bit more. In the first part, we forged and nearly finished the blade. It just needs a final hand sanding finish on it. And in this part, we need to build all the components for the handle and the guard. There's going to be a total of 4 steel or metal pieces and a handle block. And the first thing I'm doing is starting on forging the guard. My first attempt that you saw there was not quite what I was looking for, although it did help me understand how much material and what sort of forging process I needed to use. I ended up using the drawing side of my combination power dies to blank out a piece of mild steel for the guard. Obviously, there's a lot of material left, but the general shape is there. This is 1/4 inch thick stock, and the next thing I want to do is make it nice and flat using the surface grinding attachment for my KMG grinder. Everything needs to be square and true as we're going to fit this up to the blade. I've hand sanded the surface that's going to match up to the blade because as we do that, I don't want to have to come back and refinish that much, if at all. Putting the slot in the guard starts by drilling a series of holes. This particular fit up is a little more complicated than your typical guard because it has a diamond shaped cross section. The narrow ends of this slot are around 1/8 of an inch thick, but the middle is around 1/4 inch. I'm using my Dremel tool to rough the shape out, and then a little bit of hand filing as well. In the end, I did use a hot fit, which really helped with this abnormal shape of the tang. And also, since the blade has some pretty serious radius on it where it meets up with the tang, the hot fit really helped out with that as well. I want to drive that down as quickly as possible and then get it back off of the knife as quickly as possible. Leaving that on the tang would soak all of that heat into the tang, and while it wouldn't really hurt it, I don't want to do that any more than necessary. I don't want that heat to run up into the blade where the edge is. There's our fit up looking pretty nice, and now we can go ahead and start shaping the guard. I need to be able to shape this guard in a concentric, consistent fashion off of the 4 different flats of the blade. The way I decided to do this is use a simple cardboard template that I can take off and on and index into the same spot off of the blade each time. Then using just one side of the template 4 times, I can get a consistent, repeatable pattern drawn onto the guard, and we can shape it from there. It's important to do this after fitting the guard to the blade because until that happens, you don't have a consistent point to index it off of. You don't know how it's really going to fit up with the blade, and I want the guard to be consistent with where the blade actually is. Just hogging off material here and shaping this guard. Quite a bit of a process. Altogether, I think I actually spent more time just on this guard than I did on the blade itself. Which makes sense because I've made a lot more blades than I have guards like this, and so the blade process in general is going to go faster. While there's a lot of material left on here to take off, I don't want to take off too much because you can't put it back on, and I really don't want to have to start over on the whole guard. The next part here involves creating an upswept quillen guard for this dagger here by bending the sides of the guard up. This is a little bit difficult because the different thickness or stock dimensions throughout the quillen make it difficult to bend it consistently. I think a jig or some kind of bending forks would really be helpful in this case, which if I built a lot of these, I would definitely figure out how to build some kind of jig for this, but I didn't do that this time. I didn't show every time that I heated this guard up and tapped on it to try to get it to where I wanted it, but altogether I spent a couple of days. Of course I was doing a few other things as well, but I set the guard aside and slept on it and came back and reheated everything up, which you'll see in a minute here, and spent quite a bit of time trying to get this just to where I wanted it. I thought I had it where I wanted it right here, and did some sanding and started to finish it out and realized that the guard quillins were turned inward more than I wanted, and so as I mentioned, I came back and readjusted them several times. The idea here is that you have some kind of catch or trap for your opponent's blade, and so while you want them upswept, I had a little bit too much curve into them for my liking. Now that we've got the guard squared away, we can begin working on the ferrule that goes between the guard and the handle block, or the wood of the handle. Again, we've got a diamond-shaped cross-section here, so 1/4-inch hole in the center and 1/8-inch holes on either side. We can begin shaping that slot. And then shaping the ferrule itself. Starting to come together. I've got some layout compound on this ferrule, and using the height gauge here with the carbide tip on it, we can scribe some nice consistent lines to guide where the fuller or groove is going to go around the circumference of this ferrule. Not only does it make it look much nicer, it removes some unnecessary weight from the piece as well. Starting it with a little chainsaw file, being careful to follow those guidelines around, and then finishing it out with, I believe it's a 3/8-inch file, and then finally I'll hand sand that out. I don't have everything finished out, but I want to have everything kind of built and know that it's going to fit together before I finish hand sanding everything out to a higher finish. I've got a piece of bog oak here. It's about 3,500 years old. I figured it was a pretty fitting handle material for this build, and I think it'll look really good. Ended up using a 5/16-inch bolt for the end of the tang, the threaded end of the tang, instead of that 1/4-inch bolt that you saw me cutting off with the hacksaw. I got a really nice fit up on the handle block with the hand broach after drilling a 5/16-inch hole, so it indexed really well back onto the same spot, and I can begin rough shaping the handle block. I'm kind of doing a little bit here and a little bit there to have everything sort of come together at the same time. I can't finish any one piece obviously by itself, and so before we go any further on the handle block, I'm going to start working on the pommel nut. It's a piece of mild steel, got a hole drilled in the center, and we'll start that tap on the drill press by hand, of course, without turning the drill press on, and that will make sure that we have it square at right angles to our stock, and then I can finish tapping the hole with the tap wrench in the vise. So you see how it's coming together there. I've got a slot cut in the end of that threaded bolt that fits onto or over the end of the tang. That's going to be welded together here in a little bit, right there. Getting to the point where everything is getting closer, so I ended up finish sanding the blade to 500 grit, and then we'll put a final finish on that here right at the end. I also have a spacer that goes between the pommel nut and the handle block, as you can see there, and those are still just blanked out and have a lot of shaping left on them to do. I have the spacer glued to the end of the handle block so that it'll index, or won't come off actually, and we can shape everything right to that. This sped up clip shows you just how much time on these different processes that I'm actually having to take, and it's just a matter of going slow and making sure that you are going the direction you need to go. Got the handle block shaped down to the ferrule by the guard, and then working on that pommel nut, putting a nice groove in there as well, and then tapering that at the end for a better look and balance to the whole project, and then sanding that by hand as well. We're getting really close. It's time to put an edge on the blade finally. I actually have a cutting tool here. I still have to cold blue the components for the handle and guard and put everything together, being careful not to scratch the hand finish on the blade here. This is the cold blue compound or solution that I've been using, and I'm pretty happy with it. I mean, as cold bluing goes, it works really well. All 4 steel components of the handle assembly are going to get this bluing coat to them. After this, all I have to do is put everything together and show you guys some pictures. So stay tuned for those in just a couple seconds. Appreciate you watching. We'll see you on the next video.